Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
My name is Bev Joslyn, and I'm a wildlife artist, and I live in Walker, Minnesota. I've always drawn or painted things. I started when I was young just pencil drawing and worked my way up to what I do today. I look at creation and I see the beautiful things in creation, and I want to replicate them on canvas. A lot of people can't see this kind of thing in their situations in their lives, and yet there's beauty out there that I would really like people to know is there. The woods, the animals, and so I try to make it as realistic as possible, and I do a lot of detail in my work, and sometimes I hide things in my work so that people can really examine it and enjoy it. I work on it a long time. I started out with just the basics of putting paint on canvas where I have my sketch painted or drawn in, and then I'll start working on it, and it just seems to get more detailed and more detailed, and I keep working on it until I feel it looks realistic. Immediately, if I see a photo, I'll know I want to paint it. Or if I'm driving down the highway and I see something that I want to paint, then I'll keep it in my mind, and later on I'll paint it. For instance, the Five Wolves is one of my paintings that I was driving back from Cook one evening, and it was just getting dusk, and I saw all the silhouette of the trees, and I thought there's got to be wolves in there somewhere. So I painted that. I remembered what the sky looked like, and I just painted it. Like, I've got one painting out that's called Indian Camp, and it's got a lot of little things hidden in there, like the Indians are just coming back from hunting all day and they don't have anything. But in the background there's a deer, and in the foreground there's a beaver swimming in the water. And then at the camp, the women are there with the campfire, and they're working on things. They've got the hides stretched out and everything, so you have to really look at some of these. That painting is one of my favorites. Today I am working on a cougar, Mr. Cougar. And I like to do the faces first, because when I do that, then they have like a personality, and I can talk with them and you know, finish the body. But the face, the eyes, that's the most important thing to me. And they have to pop out at me and talk to me so that I can keep going with the painting. But I get really excited when I get the face pretty much, you know, where you can see what it is and everything. I start out with just doing an outline of where I want the cougar to be, in what pose, and then get the rocks at the slant I want them to be in. And then I just fill the whole thing with just neutral paints for the subject, and then start working on my detail. The cougar is a mount that my girlfriend has down in New Mexico, and I've always loved the cougar and thought it would be really beautiful in a painting. So I went down there and I took a bunch of pictures of it, and it's been a couple of years, but I finally got to it. I've got a lot of things in my mind that I want to paint, but it seems like I don't have time to do everything I have in my mind. Wherever I travel, I see things that I want to paint. I've painted Florida scenes, painted desert scenes, New Mexico scenes, Minnesota scenes. It seems like Minnesota wildlife is my favorite, and I think it's just because I love the wildlife. I love the area and the trees and the lakes. A lot of times I'll paint things that I want to put on my walls. So, like Two Wolves is a painting that I just wanted to have a picture of two great big wolves in my living room. So I painted Two Wolves. And that's where a lot of this comes from, is I paint what I like, what I want. in my house, and then other people like it too. When you see a couple of deer running across the road, you can't really study them, but you look at the white-tailed buck, and you can just look at all his legs and his ears and everything, and see features that you wouldn't see when you're just at a glance watching one run by. A lot of people aren't going to see these beautiful things, and we don't know how much longer they're going to be around, like the cougar. How many people see a cougar? I did this little pelican in Florida as I was sitting on the beach. I sketched him out. My sister has a cat called Maya, so I surprised her with a pencil of her sitting on a bunch of books from around the world. They're world travelers. And that was also very, very hard with colored pencil. The bugling elk I painted when I was living in New Mexico, northern New Mexico, where there are a lot of elk. And that just inspired me to paint sunrise moose. That was one up by International Falls. I was also making an environmental statement with swamp moose. In the foreground there's a beer can floating in the water, and I wanted people to see that so that they would remember to pick up their trash when they're in the woods. The Chippewa National Forest hired me to paint axes for them, paint on the axe heads, and they wanted eagles most of the time. They would give the axe to those who were retiring. And this axe head, the wood grain on the handle was very conducive to the rest of the painting, so I highlighted the wood grain. One of their fisheries men was retiring, and so they requested a walleye. So I did a walleye axe head. Sometimes when I start a picture, I think, I can't do this. This is impossible. But then I do it. I think anybody can do it if they have the desire to do it. One time one judge told me that paint what you love, paint what's in your heart. If you just paint other things, it's not going to come out as nice. So I would say paint what you want to paint, and your technique's going to be different from anybody else's because somebody's not telling you how to do it. But everybody's got their own technique and their own way of doing things.
If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org. If you have segment ideas pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund by the vote of the people on November 4th, 2008.